Prince Warriors and the Swords of Rima, Volume 3, The Descent, Chapter 7. The kids ran down the mossy slope to the tree line, relaxed and carefree, happy to be away from boulders and ledges and spikes and black dragons. The sun had risen higher, warming the air which filled their lungs, so they felt as though they had energy to spare. Evan couldn't wait to get back home with his beautiful sword. He couldn't wait to show all the kids at school. It was going to be so much fun to see the looks on their faces. "Evan, wait up!" Xavier shouted to his brother from farther up the slope. Evan ignored him. He turned on Finn and playfully brandished his sword as if challenging him to a fight. "En garde!" Evan shouted. Finn didn't seem to want to fight. He held the sword at his side as if it made him nervous. "Nah, I'll fight you," said Ivy with a daring grin, stretching out her sword to challenge him. Evan turned to face her, setting his legs into a lunge like he'd seen sword fighters do in the movies. He heard a loud rustle and looked behind him, thinking someone or something was coming out of the trees. But there wasn't anything. Must have been the wind. He turned his attention back to Ivy, brandishing his sword once again. "Careful, Evan, that's dangerous," said Brianna. "Danger is my middle name," said Evan proudly. He raised the sword over his head and twirled the blade in a circle, accidentally slicing off a small branch of a nearby tree. The tree began to shake, its branches creaking and flexing in the way trees didn't normally act. Ivy saw it first, but before she had time to warn Evan, the tree had scooped him up and twirled him like a top, binding him up in its branches from shoulder to ankle, like a spider would a fly. "Help!" Evan screamed. "It's got me! Help me!" He started to cough. "I can't breathe!" Finn rushed forward and smashed his sword against the limb that held Evan, but the tree reached out more finger-like branches and grabbed Finn's sword arm. Soon he too was dangling helplessly, kicking and bucking as more branches closed over his legs and other arm, holding him fast. He grunted, struggling to get away, but he could barely move at all. Around them, more trees were coming to life, reaching out toward the other warriors with long, bony branches, the thin finger-like tips curling into claws. Ivy screamed, dropped her sword, and turned to run, but a branch caught her around the waist, trapping her in mid-motion. Brianna grabbed hold of Ivy's arm, desperately trying to pull her away as the tree slowly reeled her in. Manuel fell to his knees, put his hands over his head, and started counting. Xavier and Levi rushed in and swung their swords at the branches holding their friends. They too became entangled as more and more trees came to life, their branches lashing out to form a kind of cocoon around the Prince Warriors, closing them in. "Evan, what did you do?" Xavier yelled as he struggled to free himself from the branch that had him in a vice grip. Evan squeaked in reply. "We're doomed," Manuel croaked out. Xavier's closed eyes, his breath almost gone. He had to agree.